Hello there. I want to talk to you a little bit about knife reviews that you see online, YouTube, or anywhere else. And this would apply to me or anyone. This is myself included, okay? There are some things that you want to take into account when you look at knife reviews on YouTube. One of the biggest concerns, I think, is that there are a lot of people that are selling knives. They have a little knife shop, online knife shop or whatnot, or they've got some kind of agreement with manufacturers where the guys send them knives for review, and they may or may not get any compensation out of it, or they might get free knives. A lot of people call people like that shills. What I would say is, I've been called a shill for like reviewing shaving soap and stuff like that people sent me for review. What I would say to you is that there are different levels of people like that. One, I always tell anybody that sends me anything, if you better have all your ducks in a row, and the product better be good, because if it's bad, I'm going to tell everybody it's bad. Just as much as if it was good, I would tell everybody it's good. So if you can't agree to that, don't send me jack, because I ain't, okay? There are people like me, all right? I don't do that with knives, okay? Nobody's asking me to review knives. There are no financial considerations for any knife review, and there never were any financial considerations for any of the shaving stuff that I did, although people would send me stuff to try, and they don't want to use soap back, that kind of deal. Another factor of that you ought to understand is, when people call someone a shill, oh, you're getting free. In my case, we're talking about soap, but you can apply it to knives. Oh, you're getting free soap to do these reviews. Yeah, maybe, but if it's crappy soap, where's the incentive for me to keep doing reviews on it? Okay, I got accused of that with one artisan in particular, because I did a lot of this artisan soaps, did a lot of reviews for them. The soap is slamming good, okay? But you had people that were more enthusiastic about a different artisan or a different brand, or had loyalties to a different artisan, and they saw the other person as a threat, and they would call me a shill for that person, Or that person's giving you free soap, and, well, guess what? If it's crappy soap, I have no interest in it. Why would I want it? Why would I keep doing reviews for crappy soap when I got so much soap now that I'll be dead and buried, and my grandkids will still be using the soap if they wet shave, okay? Good soap. So I don't need, you know what I mean? So you have to keep that in mind, but you do have to realize that there are people on YouTube, when it comes in the knife community, that are either they've got their own little shop, online shop that they're selling knives at. So when they do a review and you see it on their website, or they say, hey, here, go to my website and you can get this knife, or I have some affiliate links. Okay, nothing wrong with affiliate links or anything like that, but you should be aware that on YouTube particularly, and online, when you see articles and stuff written, there's a big possibility that there might be some type of financial advantage to somebody hawking a knife or any other thing, okay? So that's one. Like I said, I do not have any financial ties to anybody. If I review a knife or any other thing on this channel, whether we're talking about the sharpening playlist or my shaving playlist or any other thing, if I have anything financially to gain from it, I'll let you know. I'll tell you right flat out, this person blah blah blah, okay, or this company sent this, and I'm receiving compensation for this review, or whatever it is that's going on. Otherwise, you can pretty much be certain that what I tell you is my own personal beliefs and opinions and experience with the knives. And that's something else. When you see guys, including me, presenting you, because I'm going to be presenting some cheaper knives. But it could apply to expensive knives too. But when you see somebody and they review a knife and the knife's brand new and they're taking it out of the box and showing it to you for the first time, they can't tell you absolutely that that's a good knife if they've never used it. If I've never used the thing, okay, now I can tell you whether or not I believe that it's well built. I can tell you whether or not I think it functions well. In the case of a knife, whether it walks and talks, if it's one of the modern folders, how smoothly it opens. Like I said, the balance of it, the way it feels in my hand, what the manufacturer says the steel is and what I think of that, okay? But I can't tell you, even if it's a popular steel, even one of the modern steels that has a reputation for holding a long edge and stuff like that, I cannot represent to you that this knife will do that. The reason being, one of the things is I don't know, because I haven't used the thing long enough to find out. That's number one. Okay? You need to use the thing. I need to use it for 2 weeks, a month, 2 months. You know, put it through its paces, see how it performs before I can actually say definitively. So when when I present these cheaper knives to you, that I'm gonna, because what I'm doing is I'm looking at it from this channel is from the view of a beginner or someone who does not have a lot of money but still wants to get into collecting knives or carrying knives or whatever. So when I present a knife to you, I'm giving you what I think, but I'm not an expert, number one. And number two, if that knife is brand new, I've not used it. Now, if it's a company that I've used for a long time and they've got a proven track record, okay, with me, I've used them and used them and used them and they're consistent, then I can say, because I know that knife, I know that steel. You understand what I'm saying? But there's another thing when you start talking about steel that everyone forgets. It doesn't matter what the steel is in a knife. And when I say that, it matters, but with a big fat caveat. When you start talking about steel, the heat treat process and the tempering process is everything. If you guys watch Forged in Fire, you see them there in the first stage of the show. They shape the knife and then they quench it. They heat it up and heat treat it and quench it in oil, all right, or oil and water or whatever it is they use to quench it in. Then they move on to the next round where they're testing the knives. Well, what you don't see is there's a process called tempering. See, if I heat treat a knife and I quench it, if I heat that knife up till it's non-magnetic and I quench it in anything so that it hardens, that steel, if it hardens right, is hard like a file. And I know most of you probably don't have a lot of experience with files, but some of you will get what I'm saying. If I'm working in a shop and it's got a concrete floor, if you drop a file on a concrete floor, you got like a 50-50 chance of that file shattering into 2 or 3 pieces. Why? Because it's hard and it's brittle. Alright? When they heat treat a knife on that show, and then they move on to the testing phase, when they start banging on steel or they start banging on ice or they start, you know all the torture tests they put those knives through? Well, somewhere between the end of that first session where they heat treated the blade and that the middle portion of the show where they do the testing, they put those knives in an oven at 400 or 450 degrees. And they tempered it. They heated it up and they heated it for at least a couple of hours. Okay? So that you bring the brittleness, because that steel is super brittle when they pull it out of that vat, that quenching vat. Okay? And if they were to test it like that, when they hit that ice, when they hit the steel, when they hit whatever it is they're banging on, the knife would shatter into several pieces because it's too brittle. So they temper that steel off camera, okay? Because that's boring, you know. Nobody wants to sit and watch for 2 hours watch the steel in an oven for 2 hours tempering. So they don't tell you that, okay? But they do. Otherwise, those knives would shatter all over the place. None of them would pass any of the tests. Also, one of the other things you have to realize is some of the knives that are failing, like the edge is rolling and stuff like that, part of that can be due to how they tempered it and not so much how the guy before that made the knife heat treated it. So when you start talking about steels, the heat treat and the tempering process is everything. It's just like if you get a knife maker, a custom knife maker, and the guy's used, I'm just going to pick a steel out of thin air. He's used 440C or 1095 for 10 years. And his knives are real consistent. They're really good knives. They're very durable. They hold an edge well, all that. And he switches to a new steel. There's going to be a learning curve for him till he gets the heat treat and the tempering process right. And you may or may not get the same kind of consistent results as he got with the old steel, because he's got to learn how to get the very best out of the steel that he's using. And so when you look at stuff like that, when you start thinking about knives, you know, everybody's fixated on the type of steel the knive's made out of, and that's good. You want as much information as you can. But the manufacturer's heat treating process is everything. Their heat treating and their tempering process is everything. I don't know if this is true on knives, but I suspect it can be. But with chisels and plane blades, the way the manufacturers sometimes heat treat and temper their blades, sometimes you have to sharpen that blade several times until you reduce the length of it a little bit, so that you've gotten rid of the first little part of the steel that's on that edge to get back to good steel where the chisel or the plane blade won't roll. The edge won't roll, or it won't get dull real quick, where you've actually gotten to quote unquote good steel that will hold up and actually do what the heat treat and the tempering process meant for it to do. And I suspect on a knife, a lot of knives, particularly coming out of like China and places like that where maybe their QC isn't all that great to start with, you might have to sharpen a knife 3 or 4 or 5 times until you get back to really good steel before you can actually judge whether or not, you know, the blade is going to hold an edge, whether or not it's going to chip or roll or in use. And that's the thing. It doesn't matter who is doing the review, unless they've actually taken that knife and they've spent time with that knife, that individual knife, and used it for a while. Everything that they're talking about, when they start talking about that review, 90% of it is going to be their personal belief, their personal preference, their personal opinion, okay? And so you have to be aware of that. And so I'm going to be presenting some really cheap knives and some, well, I wouldn't call them cheap, but some inexpensive knives. Knives that I think would serve a beginner well, and they serve me well too, some of them. I've got no shame when it comes to, if the knife works well and it's made well, I don't give a flip how much it costs, okay? But I just want, as time goes by and I begin to start doing these reviews, you need to keep all of that in mind. When you start looking up reviews online for this knife or that knife, you have to keep all of that in mind, and there's probably stuff that I haven't thought of that you need to kind of just like steel needs to be tempered, you need to kind of temper your expectations about the reviews that you will see, because it all boils down to this. You should try to find all the information you can about the knife that you're thinking about buying, and then choose whether or not you want to try it, and then buy the knife and try it and see if it works out for you. A couple of the knives that I am going to be reviewing, or a couple of the brands or whatever, I can get them locally, and they're low cost brands. Okay, one of them I've never even heard of, and a lot of times that's what I'll do is I'll look at a knife. I buy locally a lot. Okay, when I don't buy a lot, but when I do buy, I buy locally if I can, unless they just don't have it and I have to go online. But if the knife's cheap, but it looks like it's built well, that kind of deal, I might spend a little bit of money on it and pop it in my pocket, take it home, sharpen it up, see what kind of edge it takes, and use it for a while. And make up my mind whether or not I think it's a good knife, whether it's going to serve me, that kind of deal. And in the end, it's going to come down to you putting your hands on the knife and using it for what you intend to use it for, and judging for yourself whether or not it meets your expectations or your needs. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you later.